Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard opposing counsel tell what happened to Robert. You've heard that Robert was shot by my client, Officer Waldman. What you haven't heard is why my client shot Robert Ramirez. I want to go back. I want to go back through the story. And I want you to think about two things. I want you to think about why my client was forced to shoot the plaintiff. And I want you to think of choices. I want you to think of the choices that the plaintiff made. Yeah, it was a Friday, and Mr. Ramirez chose to spend his Friday drinking. He went over to a friend's house, and they had beer. He went to 2 bars and had 4 to 5 scotch and water. My client spent Friday working. His shift started at 10 p.m. He was with his partner, Officer Morris Levy. And the two of them had a call for a burglary in progress. And when they went to that call, they were told that the suspect was on the loose. And they needed to search the area. And so they did that. It was at that time, they were on California Avenue looking for the suspect. But they never found the suspect because they had an interruption. They had a car come up behind them and start honking its horn and tailgating them. Now, Officer Morris Levy was driving at the time, and he made a good decision. He turned off onto Evergreen Avenue. That gave this vehicle a chance to pass. That's why he did it. He gave Mr. Ramirez a chance to continue on his way on California Avenue and let the whole thing go. That wasn't good enough for Mr. Ramirez. Instead of continuing on California Avenue and going home to his wife and son, he turned off onto Evergreen Avenue. Now, you've heard that both vehicles turned off, but it was Morris Levy that turned off first, and Robert followed. Robert wasn't going home. The reason Robert never got home that night is because he didn't set his intention to. He intended to get into something. And so the two vehicles on Evergreen Avenue, Officer Morris Levy yielded to the right-hand side. He gave Mr. Ramirez another chance to pass. It was a one-way street. There was enough room for Mr. Ramirez to continue on his way and go home. And he didn't. You see, he stopped his vehicle. And you've heard that. But he also blocked my client and his partner. And they weren't able to drive forward because Mr. Ramirez blocked their forward progress. You've heard that Mr. Ramirez got out of his vehicle. But when he got out of his vehicle, he was holding a knife. He was holding this knife. And he was running toward Officer Levy's side of the patrol vehicle. Officer Levy had to think quick, and he got out. He got out to defend himself and to stop a threat. And he identified police. He yelled police at Mr. Ramirez. Mr. Ramirez doesn't listen to this. He again makes a choice to keep on coming. He attacks Officer Levy. And while the two are in a fight, the plaintiff stabs Morris Levy in his shoulder. It's at this point my client, sitting in the passenger of the patrol vehicle, passenger seat, sees what just happened to his partner and immediately exits his side of the vehicle, runs around the back, and he gives Mr. Ramirez one last chance. He yells police. He lets Mr. Ramirez know who he's dealing with for the second time. He lets him know he's not going to win this. It's 2 against 1. And he lets him know that if he continues to inflict bodily harm on Morris Levy and assault this person, he's going to get hurt. Mr. Ramirez doesn't listen, doesn't change anything about what he's doing, and my client shoots him once in the back. Now, what would the difference be if my client didn't do anything? What would happen if Robert Ramirez having stabbed Morris Levy once, stabbed him a second time. Maybe stabbed him in his heart. And he died. Or what would the difference be if my client had shot 5 or 6 times? Gunned down Mr. Ramirez. Killed him. That's not what happened. See, because my client's a police officer. He's been one for a long time. He's never shot anybody. But he's trained that when this situation happens, or if this situation happens, he's got to act. He has to uphold his oath to serve and protect. And he did exactly that. He protected human life. Because of Officer Waldman's actions, the 3 men are alive today. And Officer Waldman went further. After he shot the plaintiff, he radioed in for help. And they got Mr. Ramirez to the hospital where he could be treated. You're going to hear a lot of evidence in this case. And I think you're going to find that the overwhelming evidence points to one answer. There's a reason why my client shot the plaintiff. And that's because of the choices that he made. He's got a tough job. Has to do hard things. Has to do unpleasant things. But Officer Waldman did the right thing. So I'm asking you, please do the right thing for Mr. Waldman.